How's it going, guys? This is Twister and today I'm back with another GTA Online video because we finally got the Rockstar Verified Stunt Races added to the game. Rockstar, well, they just announced them yesterday pretty much out of nowhere. I was kind of expecting them to make a big thing about it, maybe add them to an event week, but they just sort of added them to the game out of the blue, which is a good thing. They're finally here, so I wanted to do a video playing through all of them, get some first impressions in, figure out whether these stunt races are actually pretty decent. So that's what I did. I played through all 5 of them and came to the conclusion that as a whole, these 5 races, in terms of user created stunt races, are pretty decent but nothing special. But in terms of Rockstar verified stunt races, they are painfully underwhelming. As a whole, they lacked creativity in terms of Rockstar verified stunt races, and I honestly expected these verified stunt races to be the top level of what the community had to offer. I'm pretty sure that better stunt races would have been submitted in comparison to these ones, and after 3 months of this contest going on, you gotta question Rockstar's judgment more than these races themselves of how we actually ended up with these ones, because they are just pretty underwhelming in terms of verified stunt race. So that's my opinion on the 5 as a whole, but we will go into each race one by one as well. So starting off with the first one, this is black and yellow. I felt like this one is probably the best out of the 5 in my opinion. It feels like it's well designed and that there's actually been a bit of thought going on to the layout and the prop usage and the jumps and how everything works together. There's quite a lot of crossover sections which I quite liked. I think it worked well, the layout worked well, the flow of it worked well, and there was really no major issues with it. It also had a decent bit of variety in terms of like high speed, fast corners sections and the tubes and the different jumps. It's got loops as well as the slower, tight sections where you've really got to brake hard around the corners and make sure you don't fly off. Felt like in that respect it was pretty good, but overall this race, it does just feel like another Rockstar created stunt race. It does a lot of the same things as the Rockstar stunt races, and it doesn't really do that much to be different from a standard Rockstar stunt race. It's pretty well enough in its design to be a good Rockstar stunt race, but again, in terms of a verified stunt race, it's just not a top level race that I was hoping that we'd see finally added to the game for everyone to play. So that's just my initial opinion of it. There was no major issues with it apart from one checkpoint that I flew over without actually realising it. But apart from that, I do think this race was pretty decent, and it's probably the best out of all of them, which once we actually get to the rest of them, that's not really saying too much. Now next up, moving on to Gordo. So we'll start with the good points, and well, the good point about this race is that it's somewhat playable. You can actually play the race and, well, yeah, it's playable, and that's pretty much where the good points end, because apart from it being playable, I felt like it was an extremely boring stunt race. Like halfway through I forgot I was actually playing a stunt race because it just didn't feel like one. It felt really underwhelming to play, not really enjoyable at all, and like I said, it just didn't feel like a stunt race. It had a load of long straight sections without really too much happening, and it just didn't feel like there was much creativity that had gone into this race at all. In my opinion, it's noticeably worse than the Rockstar stunt races, which should not happen. These should be much better. This is what the community have come up with, and the community can come up with some amazing stunt races. Like, I've played better stunt races than this before the Cunning Stunts DLC came out, with the original race creator, without all these amazing brand new props. I've played better stunt races when the game first came out, back on Xbox 360, then moving on to next gen, even the stunt races then before we actually got the Cunning Stunts DLC. This race, in comparison to some of the originals, just feels pretty rubbish, to be honest. And the fact that it's only 16 players as well, it just completely baffles me. It does not make sense. We have the stunt race creator to be able to make stunt races ourselves for 30 players, and this one decides, no, I'm just going to make it for 16 players instead of 30, even though it makes no sense that we now have the capability for 30 player lobbies, and we have done since like, yeah, 2 years ago when next gen came out. So I don't get why it's 16 players instead of 30 players. And then actually going back to the track design and layout, couple issues with some of the jumps, especially the last checkpoint was like a really weird jump with 2 different checkpoint routes either side, and both times I did this race, I completely flew over the checkpoint once, and then the other time I went straight between them and missed them both. So it's just such a weird way of designing a part of a race that it just did not make sense. So overall, it's a bit of a shambles. Now moving on to Love Canyon, I actually quite enjoyed this one. I feel like this race, it tries to be the most creative out of them all in some parts, with like some of the layout designs and prop usage, which I haven't actually seen done in other stunt races, so credit to that. And it does actually play well overall. It takes a route through the Rattan Canyon, so similar to the Rockstar stunt race Canyon Crossing, a little bit similar to that, but I do actually like this area and the way that they've actually included some of the terrain and some of the off-road routes transitioning between the stunt race tracks and the off-road sections. It is pretty nice, and it's good in some parts, or it's tried to be pretty creative in some areas, which is something that I think the other Verified Stunt Races just definitely weren't, in my opinion. However, going on to some of the negatives, I felt like the slowdown strips or the slowdown zones were pretty overused in some cases. Like, I understand why they're done, like you obviously need to slow down so you don't just go flying off the edge of the stunt track, but I think they were overdone in certain situations where I know some alternative methods could have been used, because they just sort of kill the pace and interrupts the flow of the race, I feel. And as well as that, the last corner seemed a little bit dodgy to have the tube going into the row section the way it does. Like, it's such a weird angle that I just bounced off it and almost lost the race because of it. It just didn't seem to work very well. But overall, it is pretty decent like the others. It's nothing spectacular, but I feel like it's the one that's tried to be at least a little bit creative out of all of them. So a little bit of credit for that one at least. Now next up, Muse Grand Line. I have no idea to pronounce that, by the way. But the good parts of this one, so again, it's similar to Gordo, this one. There's nothing really noticeably good about it, which is honestly a real shame. Maybe it's a little bit more interesting than Gordo, which is probably I'd consider one of the worst out of the 5. So maybe it's a little bit more interesting than Gordo, but like I said, that's really not saying too much. Maybe it saves it from being the straight up worst. I know, you'll have to let me know in the comments, but that's pretty much where the good points end for me. The bad, again, it's only 16 players. Does not make sense. Please make stunt races for 30 players, not 16 players. I know that it's pretty hard to get 30 players into public lobbies anyway, but it's the new standard for GTA racing, so don't do 16 player races. But actually getting into some of the issues with the race itself and the layout and design, the first jump I had major issues with, went way too far over the checkpoint twice on both of the laps. Literally any jump in a stunt race you should just be able to hit at full speed without actually having to slow down. So going too far over a jump because you were going too fast is something that triggers me so badly in stunt races. And then there was a similar problem with the tubes as well. Like, some of the times where you'd be going too fast, you'd be picking up loads of speed going up the sides of the tubes, and then there'd just be a random bend in it where, because you'd be going too fast, you couldn't make the bend in the tube in time, and you'd do a flip or whatever, and it just messed up the race completely. And just in general, it felt like it completely lacked with any creativity that had gone into it as well. A lot of the stunt tracks just felt a little bit boring. They were all on sort of the same level. So I was honestly not too keen on this race, to say the least. Now finally, going on to the last Verified Stunt Race, Rocket Cars. Once again, I struggled to pick up any noticeable good points about this race. It certainly wasn't bad. I don't think it was worse or as bad as the previous one or Gordo. So without anything particularly amazing about it, I guess we'll just go on to some of the bad points. So within the first half of the race, there's a really high speed tube section, but somewhere between the tubes they don't actually connect, they don't actually link up and snap together, so there's like a weird gap between them both. You can get through it, but it just caused me to mess up, and it just seemed a bit messy. I think the actual track design and the prop usage, the layout a bit, I think in general it feels a bit messy. I don't know why I feel like that. Maybe it's just the fact that it's all the way up in the sky, and I like some of the other stunt races that take advantage of some of the scenery and some of the actual, going in between the buildings and whatnot in the actual city. But this one is just way up in the sky, again, without too much going on. Just feels a little bit messy in my opinion. Just nothing really too interesting about it. And again, one of the issues, a jump that I just completely missed. It was a massive jump without really too much of an area to actually land in. I was lucky that I managed to even miss the tube but still get the checkpoint inside it, but any kind of huge jump, you need a massive landing area to be able to land in, so you don't just go flying off. But after repeating myself with the whole it's average, not terrible but really not amazing either, I don't know what else to say about this one, so I think we'll probably just leave it there. Those are the 5 new Rockstar Verified Stunt Races. All in all, pretty disappointed with them in my opinion. I was really hoping we'd get some of the top level community made stunt races, but it just didn't seem to happen. Maybe Rockstar had just completely forgotten about the Verified Stunt Races, saw my video a couple of weeks ago and just picked some 5 random ones out of the whole list of the stunt races that got submitted, played through the 5 random ones that they picked, realised that they were actually somewhat playable and just thought, you know what, we'll verify these ones. Honestly, that could have been what happened and you wouldn't really be able to know otherwise. But anyway, I'm just gonna leave it there. You guys can leave your thoughts on these Verified Stunt Races in the comments below. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like rating, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will hopefully see you all in my next video. See you later, guys.